All right, here we go. Week number 5. That means 4 left. What? Huh?
No, 5 is one of the 4.
Yes. Okay, propellers. So forget everything you know about.
No, don't Steve.
Everything we know about
I listen to you. That's a curse.
All right, so I'm going to start this with a quote from Orville Wright, the guy that invented popcorn. All right, it's a long quote. So Orville says, "It was apparent that a propeller was simply an aeroplane, spelled A-E-R-O-P-L-A-N-E, traveling in a spiral course." So it's just a wing traveling in a circle. "As we could calculate the effect of an aeroplane traveling in a straight course, why should we not be able to calculate the effect of one traveling in a spiral course?" Makes sense, right? At first glance, this does not appear difficult, but on further consideration, it is hard to even find a point from which to make a start. The thrust depends upon the speed and the angle at which the blade strikes the air. The thrust depends upon speed and the angle at which the blade strikes the air. The angle at which the blade strikes the air depends upon the speed. We should do it like this. This would be almost fun. So I've never done it before like this. It's hard to thrust depends upon speed and angle. Let's see. Thrust depends on the speed and angle at which the blade strikes the air. The angle at which the blade strikes the air depends upon the speed at which the propeller is turning, which would be RPM. The speed the machine is traveling. Airspeed. It's turning the speed at which the machine is traveling forward and the speed at which the air is slipping backwards. So that's reverse air. Reverse air. Any one of these changes, it changes the rest as they are all interdependent upon one another. Well, that was kind of cool, I guess. But anyway, which is to say that it's a lot more complicated than you're going to think it is. So if you try to make it real simple, it's not. It's going to be complicated. But that's not a big deal. You can just kind of grasp it and go, oh, yeah, that is complicated. I kind of see how they're all interdependent, and then you're going to be kind of good. So let's back it all on up and talk about propellers. Let's talk about the nomenclature. I should define a propeller. What is a propeller? The spinny thing out front. Horsepower to thrust, something like that. All right, so oops. We got all these things. They have all kinds of names, and you have to know all the names of propellers. So we're talking about fixed pitch propellers right now. So a fixed pitch propeller has a blade angle that does not change easily. You can change it sometimes on accident. All right. So we've got, I'll write them all down in a second. We've got the blade, which is, you have each half of it. You have a number 1 blade, number 2 blade in this case. They do not come off, so it's one prop. You got your blades. That's the whole thing. You have your neck, which is down over here. Whoosh, there's my neck. Let's see. Laser pointer. Neck. The hub, which is the center right here. I know that because it says hub right there. The hub bore, that's the circle right there. The bolt holes, where the bolts hole. The blade tip, well, that's blade tip over here. And the leading edge, which is the part that goes into the air, and the trailing edge, which is the part back here. Leading edge, propellers has metal tipping down here. That's all metal. So this is a wood prop down here below. I'll get my shit together in a minute. All right. Oh, it even says it. Fabric covering. So they often have fabric covering down here. It stabilizes the tip. I have a little video we'll watch. Has metal tipping. What's the metal tipping for?
Debris.
Debris hits rocks and stuff. Protects the wood. It is riveted or screwed and soldered on top to safety it, which we'll talk about that, or possibly nails. On the metal propellers, we always have a high color tip. Anybody know why it's high colored out here on the tip?
So you can see it.
Well, that's what
I've got an idea.
you have an idea.
Yeah, it's how much you can shave it down.
That is a great idea. So it's color coded right there for two reasons. One, that's how far you can lose a tip without it affecting you. No, it's not true. That was pretty good though. No, actually, you ever heard the story about Henry Ford and his Model T? You could have any color you want as long as it's.
Black.
And why was that?
Production line. Cheap production.
Production line. It was cheap. But the thing about black paint, which was cheaper, is it doesn't dry. I think it dried slower back then, but it doesn't have the same. It does nowadays, but it didn't have the same adhesion qualities as other colors. That's it. But it dried faster. So any other color took forever to dry. The black dried quickly, but it doesn't adhere. Well, propellers, it's not a problem for a car, but for an airplane propeller that's going around at hundreds of RPMs, 1,000 some odd RPM, that centrifugal force tends to cause that black paint that doesn't adhere to slide off. So in the olden days, what would happen is you'd have to do maintenance, right? You'd run the propeller for a couple hours. The paint would start to slide off. You'd have to trim the paint here and actually paint the hub where the paint started sliding down. So they figured that this high visibility paint, as technology got a little bit better, they would paint the tips with a brighter color, which had better adhesion qualities. And that would keep the black paint from then sliding off the tip of the propeller, and so you didn't have to repaint the hub all the time. So that is, yes.
But kept the paint, the black paint was going over the white paint.
Well, it's just you put the white paint on first, the black paint where it butts up against there, it just,
And it just
it works.
a little bit.
Yeah. That's total BS. There's nothing about that that's true.
Well, I hope that's on the test. That's the only part I'm going to remember.
No, why are the tips painted white?
So you see it.
So you don't walk into it, hopefully. It's a high visibility color. You don't walk into it.
Yeah, take notes.
Tommy wrote all that down.
Then why don't they paint the whole thing white? There's a good question there. Why do they paint the other part? Okay, so this part that we're looking at right here is the back of the propeller. So we're actually looking at the back. And if I flip it over and look at the back of the propeller, which is actually the front of the propeller, that's called the face. So the face of the propeller is the part that faces the pilot. So why is the face painted black? And they're always painted flat black.
It's hard to see.
You don't even have
For
the,
glare for the pilot.
yeah, and you don't even have the white tips on the back side. So if you're, I think there's some drawings in the book where they have the white tipping on. You don't get it's called flicker vertigo. In fact, I had never heard of flicker vertigo until I had a customer at a crop duster, and he ran it through a barbed wire fence and it scratched the hell out of his propeller. And so he flew it home and he's like, I got flicker vertigo. I'm like, I don't know what that is. Then he's like, oh man, back in the old days, because he was old, he said you go to the picture show, the talkies, the silent films, and films are like linear. When you're watching a film, it's frames, right? And so if there's a frame rate isn't right, it makes you sick from the flicker. And so when they first came out with these movies, people get sick from watching it. Flicker vertigo. So
Is that also real?
that is real.
I don't know what you guys
That is real.
Pokemon was like that.
Pokemon?
Yeah, they were like, came out.
Everything except the paint sliding was true.
Well, we were cold.
I wouldn't lie to you guys. All right, nomenclature, things we talked about. We have the blade. So you should know what the blade is. We've got the neck. Where's the neck?
Next to the hub.
Next to the hub. What's next to the neck?
The hub.
The hub. What's inside the hub?
The hub boiler.
It's a funny name to say. Hubber. E. And we have the bolt holes. They bring it up, but I will say that bolt holes are kind of a big deal. If you're going to get a crack, it's likely to start out of the bolt hole. They're a big deal, especially in wood props. You can't have them elongated, and so the prop has play to it. That'd be bad. We have the leading edge. Leading edge goes forward and into the wind. Then I wrote this here. So wood props. I'm going to say props instead of propellers so I can save time and see world. Has metal tipping. To protect from rock chips. Maybe also rains. I hear when you fly into rain, it's really hard on a propeller to protect.
I can see that, yeah, 'cause it's like
I can't.
it would like it could get past the lacquer into the actual
Nah, that's not
itself.
I'm not that familiar.
No.
Wait, wait.
We have the trailing edge. That's the sharp part. You can write that if you want. We have the back of the blade. Back of blade, which is, that is the front. Or cambered, not flat side, not flat side. So the back, which is the face, is the flat part. Then we have the face of the blade.
This is the back of the blade.
The face of blade, which is flat side, most of the time. Sometimes it can be concave. Flat side, what does it say? Part that faces the pilot. Assuming it's a tractor type, meaning the pilot's in your front. If you have a pusher type, it's in the back.
I guess it still faces the pilot, kind of.
No, because it's.
Nope.
No.
You'd have to get out, walk around, and then face it.
It faces the back of the pilot.
Yes. The blade cord. Blade cord. What is the blade cord?
Leading edge to the
Yep, the imaginary line. I don't know why it's imaginary. It's a real line. So it's the line between the leading edge and trailing edge. Where else do we have a cord line? Wings. Between the leading edge and trailing edge.
I remembered it.
L, blade station. That is a distance. Well, it's always been said in inches, but we're getting more into the into the metric system and blades coming out of Europe. I wonder. I haven't read a manual for that. It would seem like it'd be in millimeters or centimeters. A distance in inches from the center of the hub. From center. What's that?
Joey says we measure things at football fields here. So
Yeah.
how
How many football fields? Yeah, we will do. It's about.
How many bald eagle wingspans?
Yeah, I know. It's a blade station. We measure it in squirrels. I love that. It's like Americans will do anything to not use a ruler.
7 washing machines long.
Yes.
from Jarhead, the best quote ever. Gary Cruz, when they're talking about measuring stuff. You ever watch that? I'm not gonna say it out loud.
Should do more.
All right, blade stations. So I have all. Oh yeah, we have the blade butt down here. Could write. I didn't write that one. That is the. I like that better. That's the blade up. But these are removable blades. We're talking about fixed pitch. But if we had a removable blade, then it has a blade butt. Butt. And each station is a number of inches from the center of the hub, which is not shown on this picture because it's each blade is. Huh?
It's a cartoon.
No, it's the actual blade that's been taken out. It's constant speed blades. They come out. They're not one piece. Then the blade center would be away from it. We'll get into that later. So anyway, so we have a station that is number of inches past the hub. Center line. Okay. All right. Theory. Prop theory. So, as Orville said, propeller is a rotating wing. We know how a wing works, right? And you had Phil, and so you know how a helicopter works.
Yeah.
Wait, did he do helicopters with you guys?
Yes, he
Yeah.
did. Patrick, unfortunately.
Basic helicopters. I think he does advanced helicopters later. So,
You tell me that wasn't advanced helicopter?
no, that was. So, propeller, it's a rotating wing. Well, we know all about wings, don't we? Except this wing converts horsepower. Don't ruin it. Horsepower to, because these people are just like all excited. Now you just told them.
Spoiler alert.
Yes, yeah, you got to say that first. Horsepower to thrust.
Spoiler alert, the next one's C.
He's on a roll, man. What am I going to write though?
Oh.
Something about
Something helpful.
Something about the theory of
No, I was going to write down whatever he said. How'd you know? All right, we're talking about the blade element theory, just to kind of understand how blades work. Blade element theory. So if we take a propeller blade, if you actually look at one, which didn't bring one in because they're heavy, but I should probably bring one in. They are not like a wing, where a wing, for the most part, kind of looks the same all the way down, unless it's like a Cirrus where they broke and they had to kind of do something like that. Or
Did you say Cirrus or broke?
you didn't watch the video with the guy with the pre-flight?
Oh, I thought you meant like financially. I was like, I'm pretty sure Cirrus.
No, they have the wing. It was like offset at one point. He's like, yeah, I took it to a wing discount place, and then just some of the Bondo. So, I don't know. It's more like blades are. They're different. The angle of attack changes and they twist. The blade twists and it gets thinner and it gets fatter, and so it does all these weird things. It's like, so why does it do that? And it's kind of interesting, I think, why it does that. So the blade element theory is basically you could take like a fish, because somebody else, and what is it? Not fillet it, but when you take the steaks, I guess. Yeah, steak cut. Anyway, you get sections of the blade. So we took sections of the blade and looked at each section. It's going to look different, like that.
Yeah, I like that picture.
Well, why don't you just show the picture?
Imagine it's a fish.
Yes, it's a fish.
And a steak.
So this would be the head part up here, and then this the butt, because it's the tail. So you got to do that. And you chop off the tail, and then the fish gets thinner as you go towards. Anyway, so you can see, hopefully, and I haven't even had anything to drink. We use this one. So with this particular blade, you can see that the angle of attack for each one changes, or the angle changes as it goes. So not only do we have each section has a different thickness and a different airfoil shape, but it also has a different angle of attack, if you will. Just talking about it this way right now. I want to be careful I use that. But anyway, each one has got a different angle on it. So that's where we're talking about this blade element theory. Each one of these things we'll call an element. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 elements up there. So we have 7. And you can take and cut the prop into, well, don't cut the prop, but you can take it in as many sections as you want. Don't literally do that, please, to my propellers. I'll come out there tomorrow and somebody will chop them all up. Well, you said we could. All right, so each section is of the blade. The blade is made up of small airfoils. Each section can be any size. Any size, but for us, we will say each element is 1 inch. 1 inch. There we go.
Is that size or size?
Each section can be any size. It looks like side, doesn't it?
Yeah, it would.
I don't know.
Not even.
Chips and fries.
All right. So the theory states that the many airfoil sections or elements are formed together to create an airfoil blade that can create thrust when rotated around a central plane. So how can I make that much shorter? So theory states that many airfoils, or airfoil sections, I like that better. Airfoil sections or elements are formed together to create an airfoil, which is the blade that creates thrust when rotated. Each element is designed to operate at its best angle of attack since each section moves at different speeds, which is a weird thing. So right there we're like, wait a minute, what do you mean each section moves at different speeds? It's all moving forward at the same speed, right?
Sure.
And it's all going around at the same RPM, right?
But
Like
as
the
you get
air
further out,
is
it
different.
gets,
But each section is going at a different speed when you clock it around this way. What's going faster?
Tips.
Tips. So each element is designed to operate at its best angle of attack. At its best AOA. We know that one, right? All right, save time. The best angle of attack since each section moves at a different speed. Which is to say then, so each section may have a different chord, thickness, and angle. May have a different chord, which is what? I know when I say chord, a different chord, what does that mean?
No,
Can you plug in?
Thickness?
Length of chord. Yeah. Different chord, how wide the blade is, different thickness, which is how thick the blade is, and angle. What's that?
what's that mean?
That is the.
No one came, but
Oh,
I didn't.
somebody else is glad you asked that. There we go. Different angle. Angles that I drew. The gradual change. Change in blade section angles is called pitch distribution. Which is the noticeable twist in the blade. The noticeable twist in the blade. All right, what makes thrust? What makes lift? You guys all had fill. Wait a minute.
The difference in
You all had fill. So I'm ready. Tell me about what makes lift.
difference in pressure created by the airfoil going through the air.
Well, that wouldn't take it very long, did it?
If you were Phil, we would have said something different.
No. All right. So what makes lift? Is it one thing or two things? Or three? Two things.
Two main things.
What are those two things?
Bernoulli's principle and Newton's principle.
Now here's a fun thing. When I was at, you guys have it rough. You have to remember twice as much as I had to remember. Because when I was in AMP school, it was only Bernoulli's principle.
Was Newton not alive yet by then?
And well, you were there with me. What do you? God, we had a guy in my class. I kept saying, "Well, you were there all the time doing this." But yeah, and so if you go back to the original textbooks, we didn't have the 8083s. We had A65s. And you go back to those, which I still have a copy, and that's it, man. It was Bernoulli, and that was the only guy who made lift happen. And I remember I was in the field, and I worked on somebody's airplane. They were kind of appreciative and gave me this book by Wolfgang something, Long and something. What's that?
The chef, Wolfgang.
Called Stick and Rudder.
Oh yeah, Stick and Rudder is great.
Wolfgang Long and
I
something.
don't know.
Yeah, but anyway, it's a great book. It just came out or something. And, and it talks about this Bernoulli's principle and stuff and I mean, Newton's third law. And so I come to work and I'm talking to, one of the guys who was a former Navy pilot. And I'm like, man, listen to this. And I didn't know anything about this. And he's like, man, you got to throw that book away. That guy's crazy. And so they're going to burn him at the stake, man. And then eventually we kind of adopted this and you come back to school and you're like, what? Okay. So now you got two things. So you have both Bernoulli's and Newton. But anyway, yeah, what is that guy's name? Let's see. Stick and Rudder. Not that you guys ever read books, but
Dude, no, that book is the best.
yeah,
And honestly, like, if
I should
you
read it
really wanna
again.
Fly, I think it should be mandatory to read all.
I was close.
$20.
I was.
Long Weisheit?
Yeah, very good. Yeah, see, told you. I was really close. Huh?
Long Weisheit.
Yeah, because the W is a V. So, all right. If you're going to read a book, it's a good book.
How many pages?
I got mine for free.
How many pages?
How many pages? It's about that thick, and I don't think there's a lot of cartoons in there too. So,
No, there's not that many pages per word, or books words per page. That's all I read. Yeah.
Read a fifth grade novel. Yep.
so anyway, we'll talk about thrust. And of course, there's something about this that I didn't like, so I put according to Q&A. I always know when I put that, I'm like, well,
I don't trust any Q&A.
yeah, I don't trust that. Thrust is produced by a rotating propeller prop in the same way lift is produced by a wing. And they go on to say an area of decreased pressure and area of decreased pressure. What's decreased pressure? Low pressure is produced immediately in front of the prop. Immediately in front of the prop. In front of prop. That was your Q&A. Which is aerodynamic forces cause the propeller to move into this area of low pressure. So aerodynamic. Nick, why don't you tell us about Reynolds numbers? Oh, I thought for sure he would just start talking about it. Are you familiar with them?
I think I've heard of them.
Yeah. It's kind of, so when you talk about airfoils, you get into this Reynolds number. I think it's based upon aluminum foil, but that's a joke because. But no, it's a constant. It's this mathematical formula, and it's based upon a flat plate of steel, how it reacts inside of a wind tunnel, and it's based upon that because a flat plate of steel flies. So you just put enough angle on it, and it just deflects air and it flies. So it's your basic. So anyway, it was one of the classes I had. It was like, wow, okay, that's engineering stuff there. So aerodynamic forces cause the prop.
Funny they have a fucking machine that tests aerodynamics and they choose a standard like it's a steel.
Yeah, it had to be like a flat plate of steel. I mean, why that? To move into this area, into this area of low pressure. So according to Q&A, how does prop work? Well, prop spins around, creates a vacuum in front of the engine, and that airplane is sucked into the low pressure.
That's what it sounds like. It doesn't sound
Now you know why I put according to Q&A. Then I wrote some textbooks, because some don't. Add Newton's third law. Third law. I think I said nude law, didn't I? Huh? Is when you eat the last cookie. For every, what do you tell me? For
Every time you give a mouse a cookie, he'll ask for some milk.
every action, that's close enough. There is an equal and opposite reaction. And we see the two are directed along the same straight line, and the two are directed along the same straight line. Same straight line. So what is that with our prop? So action one. Action one, what happens?
Impulse.
Impulse. We can change that a little bit to ACCELERAT, acceleration of a mass of air by the blade, toward rear of airplane. So if we had 200 pounds of air being blown that way, the airplane is going to move forward with 200 pounds of force. So let's say 200 pounds. We should come up with a weight equal to 75 watermelons is 200 pounds of accelerated air mass.
Hot dogs.
So B, so what is action 2?
Release.
The plane is pulled forward. With how much force? 200 pounds of pulling force. So you have your two things.
Airplane flies.
And it goes forward.
That doesn't make sense if you're saying, it seems like we're combined to make 400 pounds of force. You're trying to say,
The equal and opposite.
Equal and opposite. It's got to be equal.
oh yeah.
It's got to be opposite.
Sorry.
Damn, Newton, if you would have just thought about it that way, we'd be going twice as fast.
I know.
Double it, build the other.
Double
Double
it.
it.
All right.
They hadn't invented gravity.
Blade angle. Got our blade elements. All right, blade angle. Everybody in aviation tends to use the terms blade angle and pitch synonymously and interchangeably. They're not the same thing, but I'm not a real stickler if you use it in the right context, and I can understand what you're saying since I tend to do it myself. Yes.
Is it, I'm sure you're probably covered the difference between.
I wasn't. I was just going to leave it at that and move on, but.
The difference then, pitch being like how the actual aircraft is oriented with the propeller attached to it versus angle is the angle of the propeller relative to the hub.
Oh, no. So, I think you were close. Blade angle. Can I write the definition?
Yes.
Okay.
Wait, can we all guess?
We're going to go around the room, and I want everybody to tell me what you think it is. This is going to take some time. So,
I got all
all right, blade angle. What did you say it was?
Blade angle is the angle of the blade relative to the hub.
All right, blade angle relative to the hub. Okay, we'll see if he's right. Definition. The angle between the chord line which is often the face. Why would it be the face of the prop?
Flat side.
Flat side.
It's the flat side. It's the easiest side to measure. It's really hard to put, if you have a rounded, just for you visual learners, you have a rounded propeller and you have a flat protractor. Ooh, I can make a square maybe. Yes! With a little bubble in it. A little bubble to tell you when, how easy to get the little protractor with your little level and your bubble on a round surface. For those of you who are visual learners, it doesn't work.
It's not trying hard enough, sir. Just keep it there.
So if you put it on the face, which is, by the way, flat, it's much easier to do. Off in the face. Does. He's angry. I don't know, that didn't make it angry. It made it happy. All right, off in the face. Let's see, where am I here? I'm talking about something. Blade angle off the face, but not always. Off in the face. Face. Off in the face, but not always. So just watch out for that, but not always. Keep losing my space here because I'm not. Of a particular blade section. So it's going to change by your blade sections, right? It's not just one area. Excuse me, one area to go. Oh, that's what it is, but kind of do. Of blade section and the plane of rotation. And the plane of rotation. So what is our plane of rotation? So this is a four-bladed propeller. Some of these slides are going to be like, what the hell is that? And even sometimes it takes me a while to figure out what they're showing. But this is a four-bladed propeller. So keep that in mind. Here's a blade right here. And that's what we're looking at, this blade right here. So the blade angle is the angle between the chord line, which is leading edge to trailing edge, and the plane of rotation. Now the plane of rotation is what? How do I find plane of rotation?
90 degrees off the crank rotation.
Oh, that was so good. 90 degrees off of the crank rotation. So what's the easiest way to find this plane of rotation that is 90 degrees off of the... Measure the crankshaft. So how do you measure a crankshaft? How would you do it in this particular drawing?
Top of the nose cap? Or is that not really
Possibly.
accurate?
Don't know. It could be, and maybe it's not. Maybe it's the backbone of the engine is parallel to the crankshaft. Maybe it's not. So one of the easiest, or not easiest, but the surefire way to do it is if you have a spline shaft. All right, spline shaft. That's not half bad. Spline shaft, except these are all even. There's some threads up here, a hole. If you have a propeller with a spline shaft, then take the propeller off. And we're going to be using prop protractors, which are actually shaped more like this. little spinny thing in the middle and tells you the degrees. So you do that. We'll get more into this later. And you can measure it off of that and get a 0 reference angle, and then it's 90 degrees off of that. Yeah.
So when you have a tapered crank and you put the prop flange on there,
Uh-huh.
how does that thing line up perfectly? Because it's tapered, right? So does the prop flange have a taper that goes into it perfectly?
Yeah, didn't I show you?
I know, but I forgot. I just was curious about like how that like got held perfect and shit.
Good question. I was also thinking.
Actually, it doesn't really matter because those engines are so little horsepower. Oh yeah, let's see that.
All right. Well, I'll give it to you in just a second. So he's got a taper flange, because he does. Oops, I forgot it does that. And so it's, tapered. Where are you gonna? Not that much. Where are you gonna put the protractor there? Now keep in mind that the protractor has got two 90-degree angles to it, so you can use all 3 sides to use this. I don't recommend ever putting it on the front of a propeller like this, because when you look at this, it's been beat with a hammer. So not a good idea. I would put it here and double check it here. But I don't think I've ever seen a taper crank with an adjustable prop, so it wouldn't matter.
Oh, I guess that only matters for this.
Yeah. All right, so the blade angle is what?
The angle between the core line
And a particular section.
All right, so that is the blade, how it's angled. But we also call that pitch. So
But what's the difference?
I'll tell you the difference when we get there. Do I even get to there?
It's about 5 letters.
Yeah. All right, blade angle. Yeah. To create thrust, a blade must be at a certain angle. To create thrust, a blade must be set to a certain angle to the plane of rotation. What happens with a wing if the angle of attack is too high?
stalls.
Same thing with the prop. So you've got to get your angle of attack right, otherwise you stall out the blade. What happens if you stall out the blade? No thrust, doesn't work well. So if we had a blade that had the same angle all the way down it, then part of it would be stalled and part of it wouldn't. Then you get into some weird things with some blades. If you ever, there's some videos out there, we don't have time to get into it, but that show blades in motion and actually working. They're fluid. I mean, it looks like they're made out of rubber. These things move all over the place. And then you could see one that gets near supersonic when it starts setting up pressure waves across it. It is scary looking, and then they come apart. So they got to be designed quite correctly. Let's see. While in flight, while rotating, in flight, each section of the blade has a motion. That combines forward movement of the airplane with the rotary movement of prop. All right, keep that in mind. Circle back around in a minute. Now we will talk about pitch. Oops, mine H. Yes, H. So the blade has a path through the air like a corkscrew. And for those of you who aren't alcoholics, like a screw. Since you know what that is, since we work on airplanes. What?
Yeah, he has a knife, or he has a knife and corkscrew combo.
I always have a corkscrew. Always have that.
Because if you have a beer, you can figure it out, but you don't have
Wine,
a
you
bottle
can't
opener
figure it
and a
out.
bottle of wine.
The amount of bite the blade takes is determined by blade angle. Is determined by the blade angle. What's the blade angle?
Blade angle is the line from the cord line to the blade.
Chord line to plane of rotation. So the amount of bite the blade takes is determined by the blade angle. If it is a high pitch, it's a big bite. And if it's low pitch, it is a little bite. Or fun size. All right, we take a break.